Welcome back to the Holistic Monitor. I'm your host, Nick Scogna, and in this episode, we're returning to March of 1984 to a seminar where Joseph R. Scogna Jr. introduced a piece of equipment that played a crucial role in his research, the colorimeter. Now, despite its name, this wasn't a light or color display device. The colorimeter was a chemical analysis instrument used in urine and saliva testing, a medically recognized diagnostic method. But in Joe's hands, it became something more, a way to correlate biochemical reactions with energetic patterns, to demonstrate that the self-awareness formulas, SAF, could be supported through physical, measurable data. By utilizing various chemical catalysts, the colorimeter measured subtle shifts in a person's chemistry, the biological reflections of emotional and energetic activity. Joe saw this as a bridge between traditional laboratory science and the emerging field of life energy research. In this presentation, he begins by reviewing several of his own books before demonstrating how the colorimeter was used to validate the SAF method, showing that behind every emotional state, there is a chemical and energetic signature that can be tracked and understood. I find it very valuable in learning about the books in the first part of the seminar, as it gives more understanding as to why they were written and the purpose that they would serve. So let's return to that seminar in March 1984 and listen as Joe Scogna walks us through the chemistry of awareness, how life energy was being measured, not just felt.
He understands exactly, what's happening, and we're doing it very relaxed and calm. And what we're going to do first, and what I want to go over, and perhaps nobody's even really ever gone over these things, but I think it's going to be very interesting for most people to find out about and learn about, is some of the books that we have, some of the books that I've written. And these are the books that, if you get into the program, are the books that you would be using for one odd reason or another. And the first book, I want to jump right into this. So I reached right for this book here. This is called the Prometheon. This is a rather large book. Doubles very well as a paperweight. But other than that, there's some very important information in this book. And what this is about is the actual makeup of all the programs that we use. The Prometheon is a book that was written to map out the exact and precise electrical blueprint that all of the programs follow. What that means is that before the programs were written, there had to be some kind of logic behind the program, like how does the program exactly work? Most people, when they see some of the programs like the SAF program or the diet program, they seem very, very simple. And they are very simple, but they're based on some very powerful numeric concepts of sequencing. In the Prometheon is given the exact electrical sequence of the elements and in which order they fall, and these are the common elements that you're familiar with, like calcium, magnesium, hydrogen, oxygen. Some of the more esoteric or elements that you hardly ever hear about, but are out there just the same, like scandium and yttrium and tantalum. Very strange sounding elements, but are electrical pressures nonetheless. And when the program was written, I had to write all the elements into the program. I didn't want to just write a program based on calcium, magnesium, and some of the basic ones that are considered to be in the body. I don't know if you've ever read Walker's material on the juices and things like that, but he mentions in his books that there's 59 elements, which will be sort of uncommon to most people. And some of the elements that I mentioned he had in his book, and those 59 elements were actually almost half of the ones that are covered in the Prometheon. Prometheon goes into 64 levels of energy and covers approximately 106 elements. So, and I know you've all heard there's only 102 or 103, but there's a few extra there that nobody's really bothered looking at. But that's basically what the Promethion's all about. It gives a pretty good study on energy, the ebb and flow of energy. And if you're looking for something to give you like a basic layout of the universe or whatever you're really interested in, you could look at it from two different ways. The practical side of using energy to understand more about pain and sensation, or you could look at it more on the theoretical side of the whole action of the universe as it ebbs and flows in creation and destruction. It's a very powerful book, and it really catapulted the whole program into its being. Took a pretty decent amount of time to write it, and took a lot of energy to put it together, and it's yours for the asking. Anyway, I'll just put that back there for now. Once you get into the program, what you're going to need is an SAF key, it's called. Now, the reason why it's called SAF key is because originally the idea was that if you wanted to get into some forbidden chambers, you had to unlock the lock with a key. And we use a key to sort of break into a new area. Now, I don't know how many of you are a little bit bored with the present programs that exist, but I don't know if you've noticed this either, but most of the programs that you run into are pretty well fixated on the general calcium, magnesium, vitamin A type of situation. And the reason why that is because their database is common nutrition, or the nutritional research that has been going on in the last 10 years. And what has that research yielded? Information on vitamin E, biotin, and certain types of inhibitors, interferon, furon, whatever. You know, basically one pretty driving purpose as to find the hidden enzyme that kills the hidden bug somewhere, you know. Most of what SAF was based on had very little to do with enzymes and drugs, or the current study. SAF was created to match up with the Prometheon because the Prometheon study went back about 10,000 years in its first phase, and in its later phases went back through a whole genetic analyzation that went back about 4 billion years to the creation of the planet. So you're getting into something pretty heavy, and to confront all of that, we had to make a whole lot of programs. We couldn't just make one program. However, the SAF is the program that we use to enter in on that, and it also taps the energy that was used to create the whole program. So people who got in on the SAF in the beginning were kind of, there's a lot of strange reactions. Some people found it astounding, and other people, it blew them off as if, they weren't allowed to touch that, and it has a certain electric magnetic quality to it. The SAF key has the basic 250 elements in it. Okay, we call them elements. If you look at the programs, you'll see elements. We like to think of ourselves as, elementologists or elementalists. This is an old group of people who, really understood the electric pressures of energy in their precise personalities that transformed a living tissue into a certain mood or characteristic. And we picked up on that, used that. It was workable in the Prometheon, and it's very workable in this basic book, the SAF key. And the SAF key, again, is a small piece of the Prometheon. In other words, in the Prometheon is postulated this grandiose view of the universe, and that a person can attain control of this electrical phenomenon to the point where he could transmutate energy. This is the old alchemist's dream, the idea of changing lead into gold, etc. Well, this looks at it on a more practical view, and it analyzes nuclear chemistry and its success in doing that, and also its failure in doing that. The nuclear chemists have changed lead into gold. However, we won't be using that gold very much because it's all radioactive. So in a sense, they failed. The nuclear chemists failed. The alchemists failed because they never got it to a practical level where they could actually do it and make it be a viable action. What we've succeeded in doing is marrying the two and allowing the individual to experience his own transformation of lead into gold, his own leaden thoughts into golden realities for himself. Because you can't spend the gold that you get anyway. It's all in Fort Knox. All they do is they give you a little piece of paper and they say, hey, you've got some gold, and then the income tax man comes and says, oh, no, you don't. And so the point is that what type of gold we're after and that we're going to get and achieve is the gold that we're able to manufacture, that the alchemists manufactured many years ago but could never prove it to anybody. Could never say, hey, I've changed lead into gold. And what would the king say? Show it to me. And he'd say, well, I haven't been able to get it up to that visible mass level yet. But I know it's there, I can see it all over, whenever I want to. Everything's just golden, golden halos and auras all over. Why do you think the saints were depicted with golden halos? Because they were believed to be, our leading, elementologists, who knew how to transform any element into the frequency that they wanted. So SAF is that first step in learning, the activities, characteristics, and emotions. And you'll find that when somebody comes in and does an SAF, that the SAF treats them as a whole person and will deal with vitamin deficiencies as well as emotional problems, as well as separations of energy, electrical upsets, magnetic upset. It covers the whole gamut. This is what made people pretty excited about doing SAF. It was because it wasn't so stodgy and narrow in its viewpoint. It wasn't a book that said, well, coconuts and honey will cure everything, and then obviously when you go down, you get the number 73, it says take 4 parts coconut to 1 part honey. And number 75 is take 3 parts coconut and 1 part. You just have to get the idea that it's a more broader view. And for that, you need this book. There's about 250 elements in this initial book, and this was the first one. Then we moved into, and most people who get into the training will be confronted with the training manual. Oh yes, the dreaded training manual that very few people have been able to confront. Mainly the training manual was written for a couple different purposes. First of all, I found out that people have quirks, and quirks are little things that prevent them from getting any place fast. There are little voices in their head that says, what are you playing with numbers for? Numbers can't tell you anything, And, why don't you pick a number 9, You like 9s, something like that, and give you all these prejudices about numbers. Well, there are drills inside the training manual to break the pattern of your prejudices about numbers. And these number drills were written so that you could, actually break through some of the quirk barriers that would force you to pick a number 6 when it was really a number 8. Or as a monitor, and we call people who do this programming monitors, and if a monitor were trying to analyze a chain, he might gravitate to the 6 because he likes 6s better, Well, his old apartment house was a 6, and, his mother was born on March 6th, and he's got 6 kids, so obviously he likes 6s, so everybody's got liver disease. Well, we don't want that to happen, you see. We want all the numbers to be, equi-powerful. And so that's why this was written. And at the same time, something very exciting happened. The amount a number of elements, and the elements, when I say an element, we're talking about a certain condition of human existence, like nervousness, or sleeplessness, or tiredness, or hypoglycemia. They're considered elements to us. They're an element or a condition of existence, just like an element is, like sodium is. In other words, you can look at somebody and say, sodium, iodine, potassium, because they're dramatizing that element. And if you read the Promethean, I go back to the first book, if you read the Promethean, you'll see that each element has a certain potential characteristic. You can look in somebody's face and see that element start to manifest. When the miners were mining nickel, and it wasn't called nickel then, it was just a strange metal with a luster to it that they used to mine, if they inhaled it enough, if they inhaled that nickel enough, the energies in the body would start to transform into the nickel personality, which presented a certain characteristic that made them look like a demon. And nickel got its name after this demon, Nick the Demon. And this is where a lot of the names of the elements came from, because when a person ingested a large amount of it or was poisoned by it, he would see a certain effigy, or it would become that spontaneously. So we call the number groups and the characteristics elements, in that we're trying to break away from the idea that there are 102 elements and that's it. There's actually trillions of elements. An element is a basic, concept that exists and is projected into the environment as some kind of solid entity, something that you can see, feel, and touch. So when we say hypoglycemia, we know what one looks like, or do we? A monitor should know what a hypoglycemic looks like. You should just look at that person and say, hypoglycemia. Or say, no, not hypoglycemia, Nick the Demon. And know, intrinsically, and this is what SAF does, it'll come out and say cadmium poisoning, or say cadmium to that person. You're dramatizing cadmium. You're becoming cadmium. And we've had many people go out and do hair analysis, and a lot of times the cadmium is very high. And sometimes it isn't, because that old devil and cadmium and that old demon Nick have a way of, hiding their mass and being more electrical than magnetic, you see. So in this book, it was a big triumph. We moved up to 707 elements. First one was 250. Well, let's go to the first book, the Promethean. It was 102 elements. Phosphorus, the usual, the regular gang that hang up at a saloon, we had 100 and some odd, and then we went to 250, and now we're at 707. And that's what this book was good for. It was opening up a whole brand new door. And so we then, at that point, decided that we should expand the whole thing with 707 elements, and looking at the whole program, the possibilities became, astronomical. And so I set off, went into my little hole, as I call it, crawled back into my hole, and went over the exact blueprint and of all the programs that were possible. I found there was thousands of them that we could do, and some of them were more important than others. And one of the ones that we thought were very important was allergy. People were really, interested in allergy and had allergies and had different odd problems like that. But the actual program allergy was a lift-off for us to expand into more elements, and we've now expanded the base to over 750,000 elements, which makes it incredibly important for anybody doing these programs to get themselves boned up on the basic elements. There's no sense in, and nobody's asking anybody to remember 750,000 elements, but it's very important to know the very, very basic ones. So we ran into a problem, we ran into a little bit of a snag And that snag was that we found out that people have, remember the little quirks they had about the numbers? Well, that was a baby quirk compared to the quirk they have about learning things. Forget that. I mean, that made the number quirk look like, a raisin in the in the darkness. This thing, we confronted was a problem that people were having a very difficult time remembering the elements, or they couldn't. If they saw a chain, they really couldn't get it and look at it and just extract the elements out of it and just say, it's this, it's that, and it's this, and it's not that. If somebody came in and said, I'm sure I have a tumor or something. I'm just sure of it. Or Sam Glutz, the scientist over there, read my tea leaves and said that I have a tumor or something like that. Well, what do you think? We can analyze that and say, well, there's no tumor element in here. We don't see that entity in this chain. Well, the problem was that the monitors that we were training or putting on couldn't do that. And they were getting frustrated because it was very important for them to do that. And the reason why is because the whole program was based, remember back on the Promethean, it was all based on that. And the postulate in the Promethean was that if you knew those elements, you would immediately get better. You would discharge. You would become greater and greater, and you would move more and more into the ability of transmutating energy. You would be more and more able to control your thoughts and the powers in your mind, And I would go to seminars and do 50, 60 chains on the board. And whereas when I would go to a seminar before and talk about blood chemistry and hair analysis and radiation, if I'd start at 10 o'clock in the morning, by 5 o'clock I was exhausted. They used to have to talk about hypoglycemia, used to have to carry me out in a stretcher with the glucose bottle. And I was like, this is terrible. I can't stand this. I hated doing seminars. I didn't want to touch a seminar with a 10-foot pole. Somebody said, do a seminar. I'd say, not one of those again. But when I started doing SAF, the reverse was happening. I'd do 50, 60 chains. By 5 o'clock, I had more energy than I ever had before. And if I was hungry and I said, geez, boy, I'd love to have a bowl of, or salad or something like that, the salad would appear. And if I wanted to, I could hear myself eating it. And I would do it so well that at the end of me mentally going through the salad, I wasn't hungry anymore. So it was getting pretty exciting. I was saying, this is more like it, and give me more seminars. I was actually saying to people, can you line me up a seminar? What kind of crazies do you have? I'd love to do her chain, that kind of stuff. But it got very, very interesting, and I realized that the frustration of most of the people that were becoming monitors was they couldn't do that. They were saying, I couldn't do it, except for a select few. There were some people who all of a sudden it clicked with them, and somehow there was some kind of a connection. And they were getting themselves into trouble. It's like I did. There's some things. It was like rules. There's rules to doing that. It's like any powerful process. There's some things you can do, and there's some things you can't do. And so I just happened to know the things you could do, and I was trying to train that into people. It was very difficult transmitting information that had never been transmitted before. It wasn't like talking to them about vitamin A. How many times you heard vitamin A is for night blindness, Well, after the 517th time, you finally get it, I'm blind at night, I need vitamin A, Well, this has been so brand new that a lot of people really didn't get, the message. But like I said, there were a select few, and that's what's kept us going, is the fact that, we've had people having success, and realizations and recognitions and all kinds of very interesting things were happening to them, and it maybe was nothing that was mental. Maybe it was more mechanical. For instance, like somebody'd come in and do an allergy program, and they were just out riding a horse or something like that, and the allergy would say horse, leather, hay, and say, geez, that's really something. It really picked up all the things I've been in contact with. So, anyway, to make a long story short, what I had to do, and it was a little bit of a philosophical conundrum for me, because I knew there were some ways I could get this information in, and I didn't know whether it was really all that ethical. But ultimately, I decided that there was a way to contact parts of the person's mind and transmit these elements to them. In other words, plug in the right wire at the PBX station, and it was frustrating me a lot that people weren't just automatically clicking with it, because this is what's really important and necessary. You have to be able to look at a chain, look at it, and extract the information for you, not for them. In fact, it doesn't do them a bit of good. I mean, it gets them a little bit wound up and nervous and jumpy, and it could do all kinds of things to them. But in the final analysis, the program was written for the practitioner. It wasn't written for the patient or the applicant or whatever you want to call them. It was written for the practitioner to know more about which direction to take to help the person. So applying it right directly to them had its shortcomings. Works fantastically for the practitioner if he uses it right, because once the practitioner lightens up and really can confront the case, imagine how much easier it is for him to give the correct direction. If a practitioner looks at a case, is confronted with a mess of humanity, and can't look at it and says, I can't wait till they leave, or has to grit their teeth as the person's explaining how they've gone through every cobalt radiation treatment and all of the ramifications of exposure to chemotherapy. And if you want to catalog the atrocities committed against a body, to help that body, not in a malicious way, but in a caring way. How many times have you tried to fix something and break it and say, oh, I'm sorry. What good's that? The thing's gone, Well, if it's just a coffee cup, you sweep it away, But human beings aren't coffee cups. They got to live with that, and they try continually to control that effect all the time. So what we have to do is get ourselves in shape first. You can't worry about the other people, because if you worry about them first and not yourself, you're going to wind up not being able to give them the proper directions. And it's funny, all the people that come to you, they watch you every minute. Have you noticed that? They look at every part of your body and they analyze you because they want to be like you. They're looking to see what they can copy off of you to be like you. And if you present them a confused and derelict picture, it confuses them even more, because you're their hero. They wouldn't come to you unless they thought that, unless they said, geez, I know they can help me, in some way. And they're not really quite sure which way it is. You've heard of the people who go to the doctor and they get better just waiting in the waiting room. Why? Because they feel that sense of power, and that understanding is in there. They say, I've been sick, but this man understands me. 90% of the case is blown in the doctor's waiting room. The rest of it is just, formality. But where does that come from? It's a matter of understanding. So therefore, working a program with the intention of building understanding for the practitioner is of paramount importance. The more intellect that the practitioner obtains doing the program, the more the people just getting in the vicinity of that individual become better. It's very, very important. So what happened was, of course, after viewing the entire structure, I realized that some of the programs that were written and were out were not actually impinging on that intelligence. And we dubbed them grade zero programs that don't really impinge on that confusion on the inside core of the individual. So we looked at the whole thing, and there's actually 32 grades on this process. Some people haven't gotten to grade 1 yet. Mainly because of the direction and the efficiency of doing it. We're working on that efficiency more and more. But being that the fact there's 32 grades, there's over 750,000 elements, there may be many, many more, maybe 750 trillion elements by the time we're finished. We're going to find them all, see what they're doing, visit them, and get the practitioner to higher heights of energy so that they can confront the upsets that exist around them. I don't know if you've ever seen a caved-in practitioner, somebody who's been overwhelmed by his patients. I've seen many of them. They can't confront them anymore because their own case is so wound up by, talking to all these people. That shouldn't happen with a monitor. An SAF monitor should have complete control over the situation, know how to control the entire situation. But what I want to present to you at this point is a engineering achievement in training. This is called FLASH. It started out as a confidential Project M, that we called it, and what it is a program to transmit the basic data of the program to the individual so that they will learn it. It's not a nice thing to know. It's mandatory. You don't know it, you're not going to be on the program. You can't do it. You have to know what the elements are. It's like, we just can't allow anybody to be in the program anymore that refuses to know the elements or doesn't know them. We just have to put this program in, and you have to do it, and you have to know them. Now, knowing the basic elements in this program, we set out 72 basic elements that the person should know. That's your start, and you got to know them. Not just, oh yeah, that's kind of I think I know what that means. It's got to be just like that, snap. That's so when you look at a chain, you see that element. Did you ever go to a person's house and cover your eyes when you met them? So you didn't have to see who they were, or you didn't know who they were. I'm sure you've gone to people's houses and forgotten their names. Oh yeah, it's what is his name? Yeah, but you still know who they are. Well, you can't even tolerate not knowing the name. You have to be able to transmit that information to yourself. It's not so much the practitioner translating it or transferring it to the patient. It's to yourself. As long as you know how to understand this thing. So we developed this program. I won't even flip through it because, like I said, it's a confidential program. And only people that are on the program get to see it. And what it is, I had to take some data off of grade 14 to unlock certain areas of the mind, receptive part of the mind, so that the person will, get the data through. There's no sense in dilly-dallying around with it. Let's just do it. That's all. And let's do it and put it in so that our people know what they're doing. That's all. And once you know what you're doing, then you get the benefits. But see, it's a two-step process. First, you got to know the elements. Then you run chain. You run 1,000 chains, and you just do it. And I guarantee you, this is 100% workable. I guarantee you, if you start to do that and you do it with some regularity, that you will change. Your consciousness will change, your energies will change, you will know more about yourself and more about energy. That's why the program was written. Promethean and the SAF was not written for humanity. I make a confession right now. I wrote it for me. I wrote it to get myself out of a mess I was in. And that's, it just so happens that it's turned out to be something that, was good for everybody. So, I'm not trying to say I'm very, very selfish. It's just that when you're in a mess, you got to worry about numero uno. And if you don't consider yourself in a mess, just measure yourself up against somebody that's really, really doing well. Or at least measure yourself up against your own potential. Anyway, this is the FLASH program. You got to have that. By the way, FLASH, there's many, many FLASH we've created, or going to create, mentally I've created, mechanically is a little bit of a different talk to the people at the office, what do you mean you won such and such? They have on the office door, you won it when, with all the people laughing. Have you ever seen that sign? Anyway, the next book that you should be interested in is a little bit of a rundown on the programs that's written called Quark. Now, eventually we dubbed the programs, the bank of programs, Quark. Quark stands for Questions Understood by Intersecting Retrievable Knowledge. It's like, the master computer bank. You should read this book to get some, just basic data on what the Quark programs are. There's 167 programs listed in this book here. I want to get you to this book. This is, again, another fantastic achievement. It has no cover on it, but I'll open this one up. The other one I don't want to open up because I don't want anybody seeing the flash sequences. They're not for public view anyway. Grade chart. This is the book that describes all the programs, what to do with them, when to do it, what's supposed to happen, etc. Okay, this is something you should study inside and out. This will be updated as we go along. With 400 programs, it's going to be a pretty thick book, but that's okay. I'm sure you'll enjoy the reading. There's a lot of interesting things in there, and it talks a lot about the effects, the side effects, the reactions, the actions, what you do, what you don't do, what it's good for and what it's not good for. This is something you should just read all the time, and it's sort of like a reference text. So I'll put that over there. I'll give you an idea. Okay, I want to get into this now. I'll give you a little bit of background. This is the urine allergy testing procedures and instructions. I want to go over this, and we're going to go into, if you can get this into focus, Sarah. This is the colorimeter. We're going to start going over this in this session. I'm going to go through the books first. I'm going to go back to the colorimeter, but I want to draw your attention to this book. This is a testing procedures and instructions, and the reason why I want to do that is because this is a very important stage in the programming. What was happening, and as far as all the, let's say, processes of mental origin, this is what happens constantly, is that we run into people who aren't that mentally oriented. They basically want to see it in the flesh. They're not that interested in what you can't see. They want raw facts. Well, we go into urine testing and all the other testings that are considered legitimate, legitimate medical testing, because, we feel we can show them a thing or two about energy and connect SAF to urine testing, hair testing, blood testing, etc., etc. And we did that very, very successfully. In fact, we gave urine testing a whole brand new vista of understanding. We connected SAF to urine testing, and it was a very, very big step in our growth process because we were able to verify by colorimetric studies, which and a colorimeter is a machine that measures wavelengths and frequencies of the light spectrum, the color bands. And we were able to take a person's urine and verify the things we found in their mind. Very, very powerful thing. It's so easily refuted when you're running something of a mental origin or a subjective origin. But how could somebody refute you finding vitamin C deficiency or niacin deficiency or hypoglycemia or nausea, headaches, or whatever the case may be? Whatever elements you find in the mind, you find it in their urine and you find it in their blood. It's pretty dramatic because you're being corroborative. You're showing them your intellectual poise, and you're showing them your confidence that you know what you're doing. And it was a big step for us because the process of doing the program was a very important process, like I said, for me, basically. But when I started to allow other people to use my work, I came under some criticism in that it was too subjective. And you always hear that, when somebody says it's something subjective. If somebody wants to confront something from a mental origin, they're going to get blasted out of the water by the current acceptable medical on there, So our whole process was not afraid to go into the colorimeter because we knew that what we were saying was correct. And the reason why we knew that was because our population, the people that we were working with, was verifying these things and saying, yes, that's true. Because SAF had the capability of reaching back into a person's medical history and reliving the whole thing and coming up with some bizarre circumstances that only they knew about, that we knew about too. And we had several doctors that got, quite adept at it. And even to a point of being spooky was the term. And wow, how did you know that? And but we didn't care about that, though. Being a fortune teller wasn't what we were into. We were really basically into getting the person well or getting them in a direction where they would reach their own well-being. And it was an educational awareness process. But the colorimeter made a whole brand new step, and it's almost mandatory for a monitor to have a colorimeter. I mean, to not have a colorimeter is almost to deny the actual corroborative process. And the way we've set it up, of course, made it very, very easy for the person to have it and to use it, and it's almost become like a standby standard tool for us. Later, we'll talk about the actual processes that we're using with the infrared, which is the next higher step. The infrared, of course, is one of our standby practitioners' tools. It's something that will bridge the mental and the physical, and it's something that is totally, utterly, chemically, electrically verifiable. So, we have to stay in there. We got to stay on Earth. We don't want to drift off. We don't want to be in the fringe. We don't want to be out in the galaxy with the Maharishi Muraha. We don't need that because they're there. Somebody's got to do that. Let them do it. I'm interested in that. I like that stuff. I read it all the time. I think it's fascinating, but it's not our direction. Our direction is to take it all in and work it all. So, anyway, I'm going to bypass the colorimeter, go into a few other different things, and then I will come back to the colorimeter and go over its operation very carefully so that you understand how it is used currently. It will change from time to time. We'll make a new film and show you how that change has affected everything. 2 books were written following the colorimeter studies, and the first one was A Guide to Urinalysis by Colorimetric Testing, Volume 1, and A Guide to Urinalysis by Colorimetric Testing, Volume 2. And basically what they are showing the comparisons of chemicals that are used in the colorimeter and showing how the allergies are created and the different crossover energies from one protein to another, how they can affect a person's condition. These books are almost priceless. The data that is in these books is a complete scientific update of the study of homeopathy. It goes beyond homeopathy. It goes into a pan-homeopathic viewpoint that is very, very powerful treatment, utilizing the studies on a subjective and objective level. This is a very powerful thing because in homeopathy, most, I would say if not all, of the actual studies of homeopathy were basically of a subjective nature in the mind and in the reaction process. As far as the actual skin phases of homeopathy, tumors, lumps, bumps, scratches, contusions, etc., and other odd different things that would show up, they were basically objective. But when a patient would report that they felt like they had a nail stuck in their eye, I mean, who was going to verify that? I've never seen any doctor yet that could say, yeah, I see it. You got to get in pretty good shape to see the nail forming, But basically, what the colorimetric study did was to verify in urinalysis, that comparison of homeopathy back and forth, and between the subjective and the objective. So this is like must reading. Moving on right along to Formula Z. You should have this book, Formula Z. Formula Z is a treatment of the elements that are involved in allergy, but more importantly in the book is a whole study of crystal manifestations. I'll see if I can turn this, and I hope we got this in focus. If you can get this in focus here. Now I can get it, focus this down a little bit. One of the things that the SAF program does for your practice and your future practice and your future understanding is the treatment and study of crystal morphology, which means the shapes and structures and energies of crystals. In the future, there will be no more words spoken, or supposedly, depending on how slow we get. But in the distant future, everything will be transmitted via crystal. Right now, this is becoming a reality with computers and all of the microcircuits that are being developed. Places like Silicon Valley will be shrines in the future. Basically because a crystal, with its configuration, can transmit a lot more data through imagery and through coincidence of structure. It's a kind of a deep process, but nonetheless we use it because we're people that are paving the future. And I think I just invented a new word. But this is the thing that we're interested in doing is, and a lot of the programs as they are run will have their own crystal structure to them, and a lot of people get confused by the crystal. And I say, they're there now, don't be confused, because all the words are preceding that crystal. And people say, well, what does that crystal mean? And I tell them to read the words. And that those words are what the crystal is. We're just putting this as a signature on a lot of the programs so that in the future a person will be able to just scan that crystal and instantly know the entire structure of that program without having to read all the words. Wouldn't it be nice to read Gone with the Wind in one crystal? And be able to experience 1,000 times the perception that one would get reading one word after another. This might be a little bit too advanced for this tape, but I thought I'd point it out to you. Don't get confused by the crystal. The crystal is just something that takes a lot of study, and eventually you'll know how to do. Okay, so we'll move on to the probiotic remedy guide. Okay, this is something that you will have in your kit that tells you a little bit about homeopathic materials. That's all I'll say about that. We'll move on to the next one. You also get a book called Nutrionics, which is a book that was written about computers and the elements. Some basic elements are in here. This is something you should have for a review. Background data is very important. And one other book I want to turn your attention to before we get to the colorimeter is this book on homeopathy. There's 34 pages of dynamite information in here you should know about. And it's called Homeopathy 1980, and it's a book about, where homeopathy has evolved to. Everybody wants to know what happened to homeopathy. And so many people have decided to go back into homeopathy, only to relive many of the earlier problems of homeopathy. And homeopathy was a program developed by a man who lived in the early 1800s, before the Industrial Revolution and before the nuclear age and before the electronic age. So homeopathy has survived 3 ages, only to find itself being transformed into the science that was originally intended to be transformed into. Hahnemann was an electrical engineer, basically. Somebody who knew a lot about electricity and magnetism, even before the theories were popular. And he's more or less probably going to see his dreams come true in the projects and programs that we run, only because homeopathy was originally intended to run quickly and swiftly, and what bogged the homeopathist down was his archaic way of symptomatizing, or doing a symptomatology is too slow. You have to have something, some mechanism to get symptomatology very, very quickly, because there is so much to a human being, so many intricacies. So we're attacking that intricate problem right now, and that book tells you a little bit about that. So, do I have any questions from the studio audience here? Anybody like to ask anything before we go on to the colorimeter? Sufficiently overwhelmed, you see? Okay. Now, we're going to go on to the next phase. Like I said earlier, it's very important. I see everybody rubbing their eyes. And we covered the whole history of SAF in 45 minutes. But as I said earlier, we want to go into the colorimeter. It's very, very important to know how to operate a colorimeter. And we've set up our colorimeter in a certain fashion. And I'll go back to the one book here. And you should pay careful attention, because we have listed the instructions for the use of the spectrumate. This is what we call the Life Energy Research Colorimetric System, spectrumate. And we have listed the instructions in this easy-to-handle little book. And all you have to do is follow them. Now, I have to warn you, and I think I warned you earlier, but I think it's very important to understand the phenomenon of misunderstood words and reading something you don't know. I won't go to a seminar with a person or listen to a person who uses words that I don't understand or that I can't access to. I don't mind listening to somebody that says something that I don't understand, but if he says a word that is not in the dictionary, then I really get upset. So it's a very important phenomenon for you to understand, in that when a person says or writes or transmits to you a word that you do not know, you almost immediately become blank. The reason why is because there's a very intricate mechanism in your mind that transforms word symbols into pictures immediately, very, very fast. Just like a television camera would transmit images into pictures on your screen, you have the same kind of scanner in your mind. Now, if that scanner is transmitted a piece of data that is not connected to the memory banks, you will get a blank space. You will get a blank space. You will not get color. You will not get image. If I say cat right now, everybody's scanners kicks in. And you throw a picture up of a cat that you know or one you would like to know. If I say the cat sat on a book, and you know those words very well, immediately your scanners retransform the energy in your mind to put a cat sitting on a book. Now, if the cat is sitting on an elephant, you're in big trouble. But fortunately, you've been grooved in pretty well, and you know the language pretty well, and you've been trained by your teachers in the past to make the right images for the right symbols and sounds. But if someone says a word that you don't know, you get a blank space. You get a blackness, a darkness. And that darkness is a programmable piece of information. In other words, when you put that black space up in front of your mind, it acts like a crystal or a computer chip that can be impregnated with another idea. And a lot of times what happens to people is that as they're reading along, the sentence starts to make different ideas for them because of all the blank spaces in them that are being filled in by other words. You see, your mind can't stand that blankness. It doesn't like it. It scares people. It makes them upset. Ever been alone in the dark at night with no one else in the house? It gets you a little scared, doesn't it? Well, you maybe reach for a radio to turn the radio on or put the television on just so there's a familiar voice speaking to fill the void. Well, if there's a void in your mind, you're going to dub in another word or another picture that's not right. And that's going to confuse you a lot. Not only that, it's going to make you stupid. Now, the reason why I use the word stupid is because that's what stupidity is. Stupidity is a person who is filled with a lot of, errant or erroneous information. So we don't want that to happen to us. We want to make sure that every time we read something, that if it's something there that you're not sure of, you look it up. And keep that dictionary right with you all the time. And then if, of course they taught this in school. How many of you have been taught that if you go by a word you don't know, dub in a word, or dub in an idea, or look at the other words around it and try to make its meaning? That is insane. I know that being a writer, that if my typist changes one letter in a sentence, it could change the whole meaning of the paragraph. So you got to be real careful. Don't let anybody insult your intelligence. Don't go to a seminar with a guy who's, very verbose and practicing elocution and wants to tell you a whole bunch of different odd things about his life in multi-syllabic terms. Multi-syllabic meaning many connected syllables. Don't stand for it because it's an insult. It hurts your head. How many times you go to a seminar and you find yourself yawning and falling asleep? Well, you're going unconscious from all the darkness. We don't want you to get into that situation, so I'll tell you that right now before we go into this with this colorimeter. A colorimeter is a color meter. Meter meaning measure, color, measures color. So what colors does it measure? Well, it measures the visible light spectrum, like red, orange, blue. Makes it pretty easy because you can see that. I mean, what you should do is scan around the room and find something blue. And then look around again and find something orange, and then something green, and something red. You can get a little bit of a feel of what the machine's trying to do. All it's trying to do is pick out the right color in the tube because it knows that certain chemicals, when reacting with another chemical, will turn a certain color and fall into that certain wave pattern. So this is really essentially what we're doing here. In the colorimeter, you're going to be measuring basically the effects of protein. Since your body is basically protein, water, and fat, and some elements, of course, minerals, etc. We're interested in the movement of protein. We're interested in the transmutation process. You are interested in what's going to change that person around. What's going to change the tissues. And it's the protein that's going to do it. It's not the fat, let's face it. Protein and water is what's going to give you a different effect. The fat and the water don't get along too well. But the protein is what makes that structure the way it is. Now, you got to put protein on some bones. But even the bones have protein in them. So, we're interested in the protein. Know that real well, that when the urine is spilling an abnormal protein picture, you're going to have a pathology. Okay? And you have to study this. Okay? Now, fortunately, you have this book here that will tell you a lot about it. Okay? The Guide to Urinalysis by Colorimetric Testing, as I told you before, is a very powerful treatment of what these proteins can do when they're mixed up and they're not right. You should study that. But I want you to pay a lot of attention to this colorimeter because it's something that you really need to do because this proves your SAF. This is what you go with your information. This holds up in court. This is something that they use right now to measure chemicals. This is being done. It has been done. This is not something that was just recently invented. It's an old process, actually, that we're going into. We're going right down where they live and beating them at their own game and showing them how to work their own game better. We're not into intimidating anybody. We just want to show them that our material and literature works even on their stuff. And this is a colorimeter, like I said, that has existed for a long time. So, I don't want to get really, trite, but as we go through the instructions, you should read the instructions, but you should, as it says in number 1, plug in the machine, then turn the on button on. I know it seems a little strange.
Plug it in.
And it should be plugged in. So we have our master of ceremonies will tell us, do you have a plug? We might as well just go right with the flow here. And here it is right here. Bingo. And as you notice, a little power light comes on right here that tells you have power. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, the switch was on. You should probably leave the switch off. It doesn't have to maybe cause a sudden surge of electricity into the machine. But you turn the little on and off buttons in the back here, and you flip that on. And then it says let the machine warm up for 5 minutes. So you should do that too. Basically because there's a little liquid crystal display in here, and the electronics have to get kind of, vibrating a little bit so that they can get the right reads. Well, then the next thing it says you should read the instructions, which what it refers to here is the instructions on how to do each particular test. Now, every test has been written out very, very clearly. And do we have any input sheets? Yellow input sheets. I just want to, at this point, what you should have, thank you, for each person is, if you take a look at that, a little input sheet so that you can do your workup. And this is where you write the data in and when you're doing the test. So this is something that you can present back to the individual and say, well, now here's the effects of your tests. And get the numbers out there and I'll tell you everything. But I'll just put that down for now. Okay, now, I want to go over this very slowly so that you understand each test and you know exactly what's going on. And we'll go over them one at a time. And the first one we're going to go over, okay, is the Indican test, okay? Now, the Indican test is a test basically for bowel putrefaction. And this shows you the effects of the breakdown of protein in the lower bowel, in the colon. This is a very, very important test. If you're going to measure what the proteins are doing, you've got to know a little bit about how the body's handling the digestion of proteins and the disposal of proteins. Because remember, the proteins are what makes the body. Okay, it's the thing that really gives it that real nice tone to it. So we're real interested in that. Tonus is something very, very important to a person's visage, you know, their structure. If they don't have tone, you can almost tell exactly what condition they have by looking at the tone of the muscles. If you ever noticed like an athlete like Lou Ferrigno or something, or Ferrigno, or some of these big hulking guys, you know, I use that term hulking because he's the Incredible Hulk, only because he's got such hulking protein mass. Well, you know, that tells you a little bit about what that person's like. Each person, just by looking at the tone of the muscle, you can tell exactly, you know, what kind of traumas they've been through, because the trauma of a person's existence is embodied in the fat tissue. It's a complete process that's just embedded right there and gives you exact stress picture. If you could just cut a section of that fat out and lay it open and look at it, and you had the kind of vision that you can obtain, you would look into that fat and describe the entire trauma sequence to the person. Because the fat is globules of energy that have collided. They're in collision with one another. Whereas a protein is almost a complete circuit of energy that's very smooth and very calm. Fat is like, you ever seen fat on the end of a steak? It's all gnarled and smashed. Looked like it'd been in an accident. So anyway, when you do the Indican, And you'll notice that as you follow down the instructions here, there's certain things that you must do. And of course, first you have to take a urine sample of someone. I'll just move this back a little bit here, and I don't know if you can notice. Let me just move these off here, and you can see the little test tubes, brightly colored test tubes. This will make it a lot easier for you to use the program, because now you know each color-coded tube. What I'll do is, as we go over this program, is just go through the motions of preparing each thing. And do you have a little eyedropper and a cup, all that other stuff? First things you have to do is, like I said, you got to get a sample, but you ought to have all of the proper sample collecting equipment, which is the handy-dandy little cups that go along with every program. And that's not somebody giving us a sample right now, folks. That's just the bag. I just wanted you to know that. But anyway, this is an empty cup. This is an empty cup here, and we have a little eyedropper. This is the thing. What you do is you get the sample here, and you put your little eyedropper in there and just let it sit there. Now, you shouldn't use more than one, or let me put it this way. You should just use one eyedropper per person. These are disposable eyedroppers. They cost about $0.05 each, and you should, just throw it away after you're done with it, because washing them, it's very difficult to wash them and keep residues on them, like soap suds and other people's urine. You might contaminate somebody else's sample, so you don't want to do that. The reason why I made everything plastic is so you could just dump it. When it's done, you throw it all away. I don't know how many people have been exposed to having to clean those tiny little test tubes with those tiny little brushes. I mean, it's just tedious. What you do here is you just get the eyedropper, put the stuff in, and then after it's reacted into the machine, you throw it all in the trash can. Okay? Now, what you should do is, there's basically 6 tests, okay? And I will get each test together. We'll do them one at a time, and we'll show them to you, their color and everything. We talked about the indican a little bit. We'll take that one out here. It happens to be in this vial like this, and needs to be dumped into this plastic container here. These are the 2 reagents that go with the creatinine. This is the calcium, and this is the albumin. This is the ammonia, and I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got one more. Protein. Do we have a protein? Yeah, right back here. Okay, and this is the protein. Protein white, ammonia yellow, albumin green, creatinine red, indican white, calcium blue. Okay, now I was going to go over each test, but I figured I'd introduce the players first, so that you knew who we were going to talk about. Okay, and I was talking about the indican before. I'll start with, we did the indican already. We'll talk about the ammonia now, the yellow one. Okay, ammonia again is the material that is part of the breakdown of proteins in the body. Okay, now ammonia cleaners and things of this nature. It definitely is part of a cleansing process in the body. It's also toxic, and we have to have an exact level of ammonia in the body to be healthy, and this is something that we have to measure. So we use the yellow one, and that test tube is used for the ammonia test. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the calcium. Now, remember I was saying that the body being mostly protein and water and fat is very, very important, but you never discount the element calcium in the body. Calcium is, one of the most important, if not the most important, is the most abundant element in the body next to oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and the other, lighter elements. They're actually gases. Calcium is the element, is the lightest metal on the earth, but is the most abundant metal in the body. So the body is basically a light metal structure with gaseous minerals. For instance, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon are very light. I mean, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen are gases, and carbon is a very light crystal. So body is a very, very light mechanism. If it was tuned properly, you should feel light as a feather. You shouldn't weigh anything. You should be almost weightless. Because hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen are lighter than air gases, you see. So the calcium is extremely important for a lot of reasons. First of all, the calcium in the body makes up a large portion of the bones. It is extremely important in controlling the breakdown of fats in the body, because fats are your trauma mechanism. Calcium in our program embodies, and if you look up in the Promethean, it's called the diplomat. It embodies experience. It has been proven that when an individual experiences something, it precipitates calcium. A little baby, when born, is a little package of energy, but it's very, very tiny bones, because they're very, very inexperienced. As they experience more about life, the bones get bigger and bigger and bigger. People who have terrible experiences have terrible calcium deposits all over the body. The arthritic, in our society is very prevalent because they have a lot of traumas, stresses, and poisons in the environment. Calcium and magnesium together aid in the breakdown of fat. And you can readily understand that fat is the embodiment of trauma, and calcium is the embodiment of experience. You could see that calcium would break down trauma. It takes an experience. And we find many people, we're getting reports of people saying, oh, something's got to be wrong with this colorimeter because the calcium's so high in all my patients. I don't understand it. The machine must be broken. I said, no, the people must be broken. Because the calcium is very high in the urine. It's abundantly high because people spill it off all the time. They're losing their ability to retain their experience, which is part of the forgetting process. So it's very, very powerful, very, very interesting. We're going for hours, but we want to make sure we get all this on one tape. And we're going to go over to the next one, which is albumin. Albumin is a simple protein. It is our green fellow right here. Albumin is a simple protein that is used as one of the building blocks of protein materials in the body, and is very, very important in detecting early kidney problems, kidney failure, Bright's disease, infections especially. And when albumin is very low, there's a possibility of cancer. It's a very, very important test. When you get a very high indican and a very low albumin, you have to watch out for cancer, tumor growths, and things like that. Okay, now we will go on to our next one. See what we have here in the starter gate here. Creatinine, the red one, right here, is a very important program to detect that hormone action, which is ejected from the gonads and works in coordination with the adrenal glands to replace or build up muscle tissue. The word creatinine means flesh. Okay, that's the word for it. It means flesh. And it replaces the person's flesh, basically. It's a very, very important material and must be scanned for. We'll go to the last one. The last one is protein. And finally, what we do is we take a total measure of protein. Now, we could subtract the albumins from the proteins and get the globulins for further a bird escaped. Can you hit that? Thanks. We get an idea of the whole picture of the person's immune system from total proteins minus the... Okay. Let me just, we have somebody with a quirk in the audience. Want to cut that for a bit?
I just had a cut. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, good. Okay, we're back again. The buzz bomb has been diffused, and we're ready to go back over this. We're working on the colorimeter here. And so we have a couple of samples of some people who did colorimetric studies, and we will be reading those later. But first, I want to go through the process of exactly how you would set the program up. And first of all, you get the eyedropper, as I said, and you get a urine sample. There's nothing in here. But you take the drops out of the cup and put them into the respective vials. Now, a thing to do here, by looking into your urinology testing procedures and instructions, you will see that under each material, such as the indicant, it will tell you the amount of drops that should go into each vial. Now, we'll go through them one at a time. First of all, you will find that the indicant is never in the little plastic optically pure vial. When I say optically pure, so that the light goes right through it. It's always kept in one of these little vials like this because the plastic is a heavier gauge and it will not corrode. The reason why the reagent that's used to do the indicant is very corrosive. Now, of course, I say very corrosive, very in relationship. It will not eat a hole in your finger immediately if you drop it on there. It will give you some time to wipe it off, about 10 seconds. No, you will get enough time to wipe it. In fact, you can leave it on there for 30-40 minutes. It'll just maybe tingle a little bit, so it's dangerous. But you should not inhale it. It's got sulfuric acid in there, and if it goes up into your nose, it could kind of, knock you back a little bit. So what you should do is be very careful when you take the top off of this, like this. Take the little top off. See if we can get a little smoke for the camera. Oh, wait, jeez. But you notice I'm dropped on my finger, and I'm still okay. I haven't called for the smelling salts yet. But anyway. But you know, there's a lot of smoke coming out of there, and stuff shooting up in the air. Don't be alarmed by that. What you should do, though, is very carefully and without breathing it, drop it into the little vial like this, and set it up so that it's right at the line where it should be, which is about halfway on the vial. And then before you recap it, you should get, and as it states in here, 2 milliliters of urine. Now, 2 milliliters of urine is about, 2 squirts of this. 1, 2. The better way to do it is to just realize that you got to fill it up to the top here. That's all. Just fill it right up to the line over here, and you'll be okay. What you have to do is let that react for about, as it says in here, 2 to 4 minutes. After the end of 2 to 4 minutes, it will not be harmful if you let it sit, okay? But you've got about an hour, and you've got to read it. You can't let it sit for a long time. Depends on how long the urine has been sitting out, too. But it's 2 to 4 minutes, and then you're able to read it. So mostly what you should do is put your urines in and let them react, you see. And as they're reacting, you can do each test, and then you can go back along when they're all finished reacting and put them in the machine and make the proper reads. Okay? Now, the next one is the ammonia. Okay? Now, in the ammonia, this one right here is the yellow one. You put 1 drop of urine. So you get this little dropper, put it in there, and 1 drop goes in, and you let that one sit. That's another short-term one. All you got to do is wait 3 minutes for that one. Now we get to the calcium. Okay, calcium, all right, requires the mixture of these two. Okay, we have one reagent in this tube and one in this tube. So you pour them together, Mix this one in with this one, shake it up a little bit, and then you put 2 drops of urine into it and let that one sit. That's another 3-minute one. The albumin takes a little bit longer now, however. Okay, this is a 10-minute one. This is the green one now. Okay, 5 drops of urine go into this one, and you hold that off to the side. Creatinine is another 10-minute one. You pour this red one. I'm sorry, you should pour this red-topped one into this red one. Mix them up a little bit and put 1 drop in them. The last one, the protein, you would put half the dropper right there. Half the dropper into this one, shake it up real good, let it sit. That's 15 minutes. So, if you're using a clock, you should have a watch to make sure. It would be very advantageous. But the other thing is, what you should do, basically, is try to do all the urines at once. The more you do it once, the more efficient it is. If you have a program set up where you've got 10 urines to do at once, it will be much more efficient than doing 2 or 3, because you can do them all at once. Once you set the machine up, it's all ready to do as many as you like. You see? And so that's what I want to go to now. I want to go over how you would then work on this machine. Let's say you're ready to run the program, and this is the tricky part. It's not that tricky really, but you really have to make sure you know what you're doing, and you have to follow the instructions which are listed exactly in this little brochure here. First of all, if you want to do a program, you have to make sure that you have your color standards with you. Now, I will get these, each one of these, and as I hold them up, you can notice that they're very, very attractive color. They are the color standard, okay, and they go with each colored top reagent. The stuff that was put in the vial with the urine is the reagent. This is the color standard. The color standard goes with each particular reagent and each particular test. That was the calcium, by the way. This very pretty yellow one goes with the ammonia, and this blue one here with the white top goes with the indican, and the green one here, very interesting colored green, goes with the albumin, and then this blue one here goes with nothing. That is the wrong one. We'll get the right one out, but this one, this red one, goes with the creatinine. And just to show you that I do know something about this, I picked the wrong one again. There we go. It is a white top with a pink color, very pink and pretty color, goes with the protein. Okay, now that you have that all set up, and you know what this is, you know what's happening here, there's one more step that you have to perform before you really get this rolling. And that is that when you want to do your urines, you have to make sure that you have a basic or blank chemical solution to set up the machine. That means that the machine really doesn't know which chemical you're scanning for unless you put it into the machine and tell it. The machine works on color, so therefore you've got to set the machine up on the proper color, wavelength, and frequency. So if we're going to test for, let's say, the ammonia, we have to get the chemical reagent and the color standard and put both of these in the machine in sequence to set the machine up to tell it that we want to do the ammonia. We have to do that coincident with and simultaneously adjusting the filter switch or filter selector that is on the machine. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about how the machine works so you can better understand what is exactly happening in here. There is a lamp inside, a light source that's on the inside of this. And when I get a particular reagent and drop it down to the slot, the light source is over here. The light shines through the tube and then past the filter. It's a light filter, and the filter then blocks out certain amounts of light that it doesn't want to see. It only lets through the light that it wants to look at, and generally those lights are within that color spectrum. The green cap indicates that we're looking at, trying to look at a certain part of the color spectrum that is connected with this green color. But as we look through here, there is a lens on the other side of the filter that then magnifies the information that's coming through the filter and then projects it onto a photo sensor, which is a light receptor. It picks up this light information and transforms it into the numbers that are up on this liquid crystal display. So remember this now. The light is coming from the left. It's shining through a passage that is where they call the well, where the tube is situated, and then through the filter selector to a lens, and then through that lens, almost like eyeglasses, and the eyeglasses shine onto the photoreceptor or the sensor, and then the sensor is then measured electrically, and the numbers are then put up here. So it's actually converting color into numbers, which is, like I said before, is a pretty good breakthrough for us, because it was something that we were really interested in, is like what color and wavelength and frequency was doing in the body. So we're able to measure that right here, and like I said, we can convert a lot of the symbols of energy from color into numbers so we can measure it. So we'll take this out here like this. As I said before, what we have to do is we have to set up the machine for each particular test, and we have to be very careful that we follow the instructions that are in this book. Now, fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, I happen to know the instructions, so I really don't have to read from the book. It might be better if I did, in case I botched it up, but it's always good to read it until you really know it really inside and out, and then you won't make any mistakes. If you make a mistake, the machine will go into error, okay? And that means that you won't get anything up on the screen, or the numbers won't jive right. They won't work. If you're making a mistake, the machine will let you know. A lot of times people are making mistakes and they believe that the machine is broken. That's not the case. You have to retrace your step and make sure that it is done correctly. Make sure you're putting the right vial in at the right time. And we'll go through this step by step so you know what's going on. Okay, so we want to do the ammonia now, and I would like somebody to record these numbers for us so that we will have it for posterity. We want to run this off in the computer later, and we're going to get the computer to analyze the data coming out of here. First thing on the ammonia is to set the filter wheel to 420, and you don't have to make any notes on this because it's all in this book already. Okay, set the filter wheel to 420, and you turn this little wheel here, making sure that when it gets in there that it's set in the groove and the filter is all lined up. You then get your, it says insert square yellow cap reagent tube into the colorimeter. Now this is a blank solution without urine in it. Okay? You put that in like that, and then it says to turn this to T. Now can you focus in on the numbers here? And here are the numbers here. T, the word or letter T stands for transmittance. And that is the light transmitting from the lamp through the vial. And what you want to do is that right now the transmittance is 22, which means that what's happening is the light is, as is going through the vial there, is only getting through 22%. You want to give it 100% transmittance, so you must turn the dial here, which is the transmittance dial, up to 100. just keep turning it and turning it. And every once in a while, if you're not, if you happen to be one of the unlucky ones, you run into the problem of having this thing go all the way up to 94, which means that, well, is the machine broken? Or, I'm glad this happened here, because basically what's happening is you go through a little mental checklist of what might be wrong. It's very, very rare that the machine is broken. It is more the case that the reagent has somehow gone a little bit sour. Now, a lot of people say, well, geez, if the reagent goes a little bit sour, then the test isn't any good. That's not true at all. The reagents are needed to bring the machine to the right frequency. You need a very, very stable reagent to bring the machine to the right frequency, but you don't need that great of a reagent to run a urine test, because once the machine has been brought to the frequency, the test as it is of such a wide spectrum that the variation in the reagent's half-life, or whatever you want to call it, is not that germane to the process. In other words, the amount of point differentiation that will occur is not that important. But it is important in setting the machine up. So what you have to do is look through your things here and make sure that you can find one that, comes up to the right number. If it doesn't, then you scrap the whole thing. Apparently here we've got some reagents that are a little bit sour, and this does not mean that they cannot be used. It just means that they are not usable to set this particular colorimeter up to the right frequency. Sometimes you got to check this little filter wheel thing here and make sure that it's not jammed. Play that a little bit. A little kind of troubleshooting type of a thing. Let me see what we get on this time. Oh. We seem to get 94. 94. Okay, so, alright, 93. So, what we'll have to do is go to the next tests, check that out. I don't have another set of reagents. If it is your machine, you'll have to fix the machine somehow. And generally it is not the machine. I have another set of reagents here. Down here I will try. Does life energy work? Yes, it does. There it is. Life energy is real and living in Rosemary's house. In exile. But there it is, 100. All right, the machine has been set up, okay, apparently. Many times when you get a reagent that is running like this, you should just bring that dial all the way flush to the end, and that'll be generally pretty much the right setup, okay? Now, the next thing we have to do is then insert the yellow standard. Turn this to C. C does not stand for color. You would think it would stand for color on a colorimeter. It doesn't. It stands for concentration. How much concentration of light or frequency there is. Noticing the 71.4, I don't know if you can see this through here or not, but I hope that you can. We will dial this up to 105.5 on the dial. Okay, very accurate machine, by the way. It is. It measures in parts per million and parts per billion. Most of your machines like to do hair analysis will only measure in parts per million. This will go all the way to parts per billion. I'm sorry. So we have some samples here. We have some people's urines here. We did that were ready. Here's one. So it looks like one of those little bubble things that you see in there. And that's a 54.6. Okay? We'll just do it that way. And were they shook? They should have been shook.
No.
You should shake it. It says right in the instructions on the ammonia. Shake. Shake. Just plain shake. It doesn't say shake vigorously or shake with enthusiasm. It just says shake. Let's try that one again. Oh, 36.5 after the shake. And this other one's shook. 105.6. That was Mark, I think, yeah. 105.6, and the first one was? Linda, okay. Now, as I said before, these are disposable. You should throw them away. Don't keep them. They make terrible knickknacks. You should just throw them in the trash can. Okay. Now, next thing is, I want to show you a little bit about the calcium here. First, you're going to get this part here. You have to make a situation here, a chemical, a blank chemical, so that you can set the machine up for calcium. You do that by pouring that in there. Just shake it up like that. Now you got your blank set up. The book tells you to move the filter selector to 570, and then put your blank in, and you're ready to turn it down to 100% transmittance. There we go. Okay, that one was easily set up. I have no trouble with that one. Just drop that one right in there like that. Okay? Then we go and put our color standard in. Now this one, I want to caution you, you should set up to C, and we're interested in putting it to 2.9. Now, again, we're having trouble with this one. I'm really glad this is happening, because I want to show you how to react in this situation. Noticing that this one sets at 101, and when we move to the color selector, just retracing the steps and efforting to correct it. You know what I mean? Because it's it's not something that's really wrong with the machine. It's just how you set things up.
You are dealing with a lot of light right now, and that does work on light principles that may be throwing the machine off.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't throw it off that much, though. You shouldn't get that much of a throw-off. Where you're going to get a lot of interferences around fluorescent lighting. Try not to do it under fluorescent light. You get a lot of ambient light bouncing around. Fluorescent is a very energetic, vibrating type of a light. It's different than your regular incandescent lighting, and it's not the same. You'll notice sometimes you get a strobe effect, when you're in that purple haze, they call it. There's a song written about that. Anyway, we take this down to 2.9, and we're all ready to read on the calcium. So we put the lady's calcium in. That looks okay. And hers is 71 point... Oops, we got a drop here. 69, it's moving. 68, we're losing it. This looks like, monitoring the heart monitor at the hospital. Alright, this one's still reacting for some reason. Shake it? Yeah. It needs a shake, probably. We gotta watch our technicians haven't. There we go, 36. Now, if you get it and it hasn't been shaken, then you're going to have a few problems. I don't suggest shaking it before you put it in there. You should shake it when you did it. And it should be stable. Mark's is about 153. Put on that one. So his is really high, and hers was about 71. So hers wasn't too bad. His was very high. A lot of spillover. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. And we want to do the other low intensity one, which is the, geez, I'm almost afraid to open this. Okay, well, I'll brave the indican. Watch this, folks. Alright, just hold it away from your nose. Don't, give it to somebody and say, what do you think? It'll really kind of burn their nose. You can see a little bit of smoke coming off there. Anyway, drop that in there like that. Now we needed this for the blank, okay? So we get this set up, set the machine to 610, and put the blank in. I don't know if you notice, it's really actually very easy. If you know what you're doing, it's very easy. It may look too easy because I'm doing it off the top of my head. Just follow over to the little book, and the Wizard of Oz will save the day here. Down to 100. Bingo, okay? And you put your color standard in. Always got to put a blank solution in, then a color standard. That's all. It's very simple. Follow the book. It will tell you the blank, then it will tell you the color standard, what to put in. You turn this one over to C1 and then to 395. And that one did it effortlessly. You always pray when you put it in there, but it's fun trying to get it to work, even. But usually it shouldn't give you any problem whatsoever. Now, here's the one person. 440. What is your, what's the name on that?
Linda.
Linda, okay. Linda and then Mark. Mark hits a 828. Okay? Now, a lot of this may not mean anything to you, but at the end, when we review this, we will go over whether or not the readings were high or low, whatever. And I'll show you how to use the books, the guides to urinalysis by colorimetric testing, etc., like what they're all about. Okay, so the next one we want to do is the, let's see, I think we're going to do this one next. You shouldn't be as tentative about it as I am. You should have it all set up and say, well, now of course your input sheets will have it all set up the way you want it. And you put that in there like that, shake it up a little bit. This is where you mix two of them. Now, the creatinine, you have to mix two of them. And you put your filter wheel down to 530. And as I said, all of this is right in the book. You just follow along in this little book here, step by step. Over to T. To 100. Put your beautiful orange color standard in there. Over to C1 and spin her down to 147. Now, like I said, I'm rattling off the numbers because I know them. I know that's not fair. But as I said, they're all right here in the book. And I'm kind of cheating off this at the corner of my eye. Alright, here we go. Linda, it's a 47. Throw that away. And Mark, a 55. So that's not too bad. They're in a pretty good range. Next one we'll go to is the albumin. 610 on your dial. Over to T. Spin her down. Don't be afraid. Put a quarter on it. Maybe you'll win something. Who knows? Put some green stuff in there. It's getting late. It's time for the guacamole and bean dip, right? Okay, we're really flying now. I better not take this to the basketball players. They'll try to smoke it, right? All right, let's go over to the albumin. All right, here we go, albumin. And we're on the color standard, so we know it's 192. on concentration. Spin her down. Right to 192. Okay. Alright, we're all ready to read. Now, as I said, I don't know if you've noticed this or not. This lady has an infection. 25. Infection. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I think somebody put the wrong stuff in here. But anyway, just disavow that one. Who did that one?
I did them all.
And there's red stuff in there? Let me check this again. We're gonna, you know who's this who back here?
Yeah, on the right. Mark's is on the right.
Mark's on the right. Okay, now, if you get a quirky reading, okay, you say, aha, there is a quirk. I suggest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That you reevaluate it. I looked at this stuff and I know there's not supposed to be any red stuff in there. Okay? So I know we're going to wait 10 minutes on this one. We'll just put that off to the side. While we're talking, we'll let that react. The only, things that have red albumin are Gila monsters. So I know that looking at him, he looks nothing like a Gila monster. Alright, so we put this, let's go to protein instead. I'll tell you what we're going to do, just for general principles. I think we should then recheck the other lady. I don't want to condemn her to a life of infection. Yeah, you gotta be careful. You don't want, this is not for condemnation or evaluation or, let's see, here's what we put up on the book. Or, to like intimidate somebody with what you know about them. You gotta understand your knowledge is something that's supposed to set them free, not imprison them, make them crazier. Okay, so we put the blank solution of protein in here. And boy, does it look nice. Look at that. Put that in there, and look at that color, boy, that's really something. There we go. That's the one. Pink. And 222. We're going to spin her up. And we're spinning her. All of a sudden, we hit a snag. Notice, it's like, oh my goodness, it's not going. Okay? So, immediately we make a mental check. You do not smash the machine. One thing you do not do. Do not curse down the gods. What you do is you retrace your steps, look back at your filter selector. I didn't change it to the right filter selector. Shame on me. So I go to 420, and all of a sudden you see the machine reacting in jubilation. Numbers are flying all over the place, whereas before it was stuck, frozen, and uncooperative. So what you do, you just try to talk to it, because there was an intention when this was built. Someone put an intention for it to work a certain way, and you just have to follow that intention beam. So you put that in there, and 194 for Linda. Into the trash heap you go, Linda. And then 194. Look at this. They must have something going here. 194. Their proteins are vibrating at the same rate. And you'll find that with people. You're going to find that people, their urines are very similar. I've done group studies, and the most bizarre patterns of urine show up that you would never see, but they're all the same. And you say, oh, this machine is not right. They're all coming out the same. Well, it's the people that you're around. We proved that at one of our seminars that, people change urine. If you don't like somebody, don't let them vibrate your urine to another frequency. That's my viewpoint. That is a homeopathic principle. So, this opens the door for a lot of really bad jokes. So I'm going to pass. I'm just going to pass on that. And I'm waiting for the urines to react over there, the other ones. But while I'm doing that, what I want to do is, if you can pass me those reads, and I will then go over and circle on your chart. I'll hold up, the pen for a second, thanks a lot. I'll hold up this chart. I guess you can't see it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle on the chart, it shows you there are ranges. And what you do is you take the numbers that you had accrued by doing the test and circle the range so that you know where you are, okay? So this way you can draw a little graph pattern. Now I'm going to do it, and I'm going to show you how this graph pattern is going to come out here. So first is 36, let's do Linda first, 36.5, and I put a circle there, and 440 on the indican, and I put a circle there, and 36 on the calcium, put a circle there, creatinine was 47, put a circle there, and 194 for the protein, and I put a circle there. So you can draw a little bit of a connector here, like this, and you can see, just hand-drawn, a little bit of a graph that gives you a flow chart of, like, you know, where these proteins are going and everything. And this is very, very important, because one thing we know about her so far, we haven't really got the right information on the albumin. We'll get that soon. She's in range, we call it. This is the range of the program. This is the high and the low range. High on this side, low on this side. And she is in range. In other words, her urine is kind of normal, okay? In other words, she probably hadn't done any kind of vigorous, upsetting, traumatic experience, or she wasn't out exercising or doing something else. But we know we got a pretty good read, and we can do something with this. We know we can analyze a little bit. And I'm going to show you how you can do it, manually analyze this. Those of you who have computers and manuals that will compute this data, there's other information that you can get, but I'll show you how to do this. The other thing we're going to do is Mark's. We'll circle his, and there, and we're finding out something immediately about Mark. And it's nothing really bad, other than he has jumped. If you look at that, he's got 1, 2, 3 off the chart. So his urine is in a pathological condition which is outside the measuring limits of this program. He's going off the chart, which means he's outside of the range that he's supposed to be in for us to get a proper measurement. Now, we were using a program called the Euroscan for a while, and we found out that an awful lot of people were going outside the ranges of the program, so we developed what's called Euro-X, which is Euro expanded scales, just for this. So people who have computers should have Euroscan for this type of read, and they should also have Euro-X for this type of read. Okay, very, very important. And pretty soon we'll have this other information, we can connect that into it. But while we're doing that, let's go to our primary book here called A Guide to Urinalysis by Colorimetric Testing. Okay, very important book. What this book will do is it will tell you about high and low readings for each test. So you look at this, you say, oh my goodness, ammonia is too high. Well, you can go to the book and look in the book, and it will tell you what's happening with a high ammonia. See, it says real big ammonia.
Well, we got cut off there with that video. Now, I do have some audio that is 5 or 6 tapes long, so that would be encompassing more of a full seminar or a full day or 2 days on the colorimeter and SAF theory and practice. You heard some mention of the infrared, but not much. The infrared was in its infancy at this point. I believe that came out early '83. Colorimeter would be another detecting device, another device used to get more data for the practitioners and the clinicians and those that were using the technologies with their clients. That was Joseph R. Scogna Jr., recorded in 1984 in March, presenting the work of the colorimeter, a urine testing system used to validate energetic patterns revealed through the self-awareness formulas. This recording captures the turning point in his research when he was still working with clinicians to try and drive the use of SAF in a clinical format and and environment. He was trying to move away from the theory and get into the data with using clinics and their practitioners and the clients. He could get free data on the different systems and the modalities to find out in the research how life energy acted, how it could be observed and tracked. Joel's goal was always to bridge awareness and analysis, emotion and chemistry, human experience and data. And this was one of the first tools that made that bridge possible. We're continuing to digitize here these rare archival recordings. They're on VCR tapes. They are over 40 years old, most of them at this point. So there is some quality issues with a lot of them, as you'll see in some of the next ones coming up as well. We have many that are coming up, at least 20 tapes, of VCR tapes of videos on various different aspects of SAF and different seminars throughout mainly the 10 years from 79 to 89 that he operated and ran the business of Life Energy Research Foundation. We're going to be bringing more to you, not just audio. So you'll be seeing it in living color, exactly as they were captured on tape at the time. To explore more of Joseph Scogna's work, visit lifeenergypublications.com and discover the foundational texts Nutrionics, Project ISIS, and The Secret of SAF. Until next time, my friends, stay aware, stay balanced, and keep your energy flowing.
And this is an answer to the burning question, where did this program come from? I'm answering, where did it come from? Again, reiterate that studies made on radiation decay and breakdown series of the human body and its relationship with intelligence is where it came from. And that's the logic of the order that was developed is the development of the computer programs and all the relationships to the ancillary statements. For example, happiness is a very broad and general statement and deals with level 4. We have statements in the program such as unable to find true lover or something like that. I mean, that's obviously a conglomeration or a concoction of several numbers in a different expression. In other words, we can then take numbers and intersect them and make expressions with them. Instead of having to just use one number, we could, to define an individual's condition, use 6 or 7 numbers. And that's called a chain, okay?